Hi, here is Markku Wilenius, and I want to talk about the Ukraine and the coming food crisis related to this conflict that we have currently going on. Did you know that actually Ukraine and Russia together provide an extensive amount of global agricultural supply, commodities, food, fertilizers, and so on. When it comes to some of the key products in the markets in the world, it turns out that Ukraine and Russia both are big suppliers, and together they are the ones that is needed usually to provide agricultural products and commodities to the global market. And this is true particularly with those countries that are highly reliant on agricultural imports, supplies. And those are the type of countries like Egypt or Bangladesh or Pakistan, big countries with large populations. For now, supplies have been quite secure in terms of the market price and the availability. But now, with the war, we have two things. We have, first of all, we have Russia, and Russia has got extensive sanctions that are crippling its capacity to export anything. And secondly, there is Ukraine, which has a really hard time currently to export due to the pressures that comes from the Russia, disabling Ukraine to do its normal export. As a result of this, the prices have skyrocketed in global commodity markets. If this is somehow manageable for a lot of developed countries, when it comes to these developing countries, what I mentioned, like Bangladesh, Indonesia, Egypt, Pakistan, and so forth, they are in a real trouble, because what this rise of the price level really mean for them is that they simply don't have money anymore to buy those supplies from other sources. Because even if the Ukraine and Russia are not the only ones that are exporting and providing for global agricultural commodity markets, they are so significant that if they are out of that market, that has a very deep impact on those markets. But moreover, it is also the situation where we are right now globally, that some of these sources, some of these minerals, some of these fertilizers and other agricultural products are becoming really scarce, particularly when it comes to those raw materials as nitrogen and potassium and many others that are used for fertilizers. We have created a kind of agriculture in this world where the farmers are increasingly reliant on a steady supply of fertilizers. Now, if these fertilizer prices is also getting up, of course, it cannibalizes the whole business of the farmers. Even if there is no sort of a direct link always to from, let's say, Ukraine or Russia to Pakistan or Bangladesh, there is a lot of chain reaction that happens in the global market as a result of this turbulence. So what we are seeing is quite a drama which we are largely unaware of in the north and in the west and anywhere in the affluent part of the globe. But in the more emerging economies, developing countries, the situation is quite different. They have been pushed to the corner without them being any part of this conflict. So when it comes to the issue of how to solve this problem, emerging global food crisis, of course, the only answer to that is that stop the war, stop the conflict. And while that is easy to be said, that's very hard to be done, because we have the situation, unfortunately, where there is no global governance system that would put stop to this in effect. Our current model is that we can only work with the sanctions, which are kind of a punishment of wrongdoing, but there is nowhere a police, a global police, that could say that, well, you just guys simply need to stop this, and being able to actually enforce, because there are lots of that say this, but they don't have the muscles to do that. So from Futurist perspective, this is highly interesting, as it is frightening to see that inside the system, this type of the turbulences that occur have consequences that nobody really thought of. I don't think that even those guys in Russia that were a part of igniting the war never thought much about this type of the consequences. Maybe some of them don't bother, but again, I'm sure that there are lots of people who do bother, who are concerned about what is happening. So making this kind of an intervention have the type of the consequences that hardly anyone could sort of pre-imagine. Even though in the retrospect, you can see that, well, we could have forecasted that, we could have foreseen that. But because there was not really interest of doing that, and not really any kind of idea that if the direct consequences, the war, that there are so many other indirect consequences that happens. And of course, we know already well what is happening now in Europe. So even if Europe doesn't have the food crisis in the same way, instead it has a severe energy crisis. And this energy crisis will deepen in this winter. Everything shows that, meaning that the prices are getting high, the supplies are getting low, and all of this has a serious consequences. But this should make us to really learn two things. The first is that we should be able to actually track these kinds of events actually before they actually happen, and be able to see at least some of those consequences and play them out as to reinforce the idea that we need to act before it's too late. In this case, what we have now, that we have this severe food crisis coming, that was not probably in the minds of those Western leaders that went to negotiate to Moscow before the war with an idea to try to bend Putin's mind not to ignite the war. What if we would have played out all these different scenarios about what is happening not only to developing countries, emerging economies, not only to Europe, but also to Russia? What is the kind of a dire consequence of this type of the war? I think if we could have been having a detailed understanding of some of these consequences, that would have put maybe some reflection in the minds of those people that were planning this war. So here is the teaching. We need to, at any case, we always need to think about the consequences of our action, and not just only think, but we need to kind of anticipate those consequences. And more we are able to do that before things start to escalate, the more we can also anticipate and understand the real cost of any action. So, summarizing, food crisis on the global basis, we haven't seen that happening. We haven't seen that happening in the sense that it's happening now, probably extending to the next winter and next spring and next summer. This is not the first time that we have something like this happening on some scale. For instance, the commodity prices went up in the late 2000 before the financial crisis started. But that was a very different type of this crisis still. This crisis stems from actual limitation of the supplies of the key commodities in our agriculture, in our food chain, and in our capacity to grow food around the world. So this is the kind of the new era of the vulnerability that has been built. For us, it is a very important experience to learn, for that in the future we would have a very different type of the global governance system that could actually prevent any of this happening, what we currently see actually taking place. So our hope should be that in the future we are able to stop right from the outset these type of escalations, and only through that we can sort of guarantee that this global system works in such a way that it enables the steady food prices, it enables the type of predictability of the market that is needed for people to actually to guarantee the supplies and guarantee that they get the everyday food on the table. Please subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends, and look for the related videos, and see you soon.